great. Yeah. Well, it's great to take part in this event. It is a really important time, as you said, Stuart, for so many businesses. I'd like to, well, I am Peter Totterdill from Workplace Innovation Europe. I'm trying to get the screen to change. Oh, there we go. We're a not-for-profit organisation. Our origins go back about 30 years. And we're really created to promote better ways of working that lead to high performance, higher levels of innovation, and really better quality of working life for people as well. I'd like to introduce my colleague Natalie. Natalie Wilkie is one of our leadership development specialists and has particular expertise in the field of emotional intelligence for leaders. And she'll be talking in just a few minutes. I suppose the key message that really runs through this is that we know a lot about what makes organizations perform well, become innovative, and also to provide great places to work. That doesn't go on hold now. That's not in suspended animation until the end of the crisis. In fact, it becomes even more important now. And it's really a great opportunity for businesses to think about those dysfunctional or less than optimal working practices that you've probably known about for quite a long time, and to think now about how to come out of this, this crisis better positioned for the future. We've been talking a lot to our old friend and colleague, Edwin van Leerburger, in the last few days. Some of you may know Edwin. Until recently, he was the Global Vice President for Supply Chain for Bombardier. And Edwin's had a lot of senior positions over time and throughout his career, and really faced a lot of different crises, a lot of very difficult situations, whether to do with global recessions, whether to do with wider competitiveness issues. Edwin has very often challenged dominant corporate thinking about the way in which you deal with those crises. Because what he's found is that there is a very strong tendency, as always, to take a very short-term, a rather defensive attitude to how you manage crisis. You cut down on innovation, you cut down on investment, you really try and push the cost on employees and on suppliers. What Edwin's view is that what we know from past crises is that organizations like this are in danger of damaging their long-term competitiveness. Whereas on the other hand, there are other companies who come out of crises in a really strong position. They come storming out of them because they've actually thought they've taken the opportunity to rethink their business models, to rethink about the way that they work, and to really focus on innovation in their products, services, and processes. So really there is a choice. We shouldn't feel as though there is only one way to actually manage the current crisis by really taking that kind of defensive approach. The key concept for us is workplace innovation. Now, workplace innovation is a concept which we developed about 20 years ago. It came from a really large-scale international study sponsored by the European Commission. It involved about 120 companies across Europe, all of whom were high-performing companies, all of whom were companies with a high capacity for innovation, and all of whom were providing really good, healthy, well-being working environments for their employees. It's very difficult to summarize what 120 very, very different companies in 10 different countries, large companies, small companies, manufacturing, services, what they had in common. Other than that, they were all using evidence-based workplace practices that enable people to use and develop all of their knowledge, all of their skills, all of their creativity in their day-to-day work. And since then, the concept of workplace innovation has been adopted by, has been used as a driver for change, for transformation in companies all over Europe. We know quite a lot of companies who've been on that journey. And it's also been incorporated into the national economic strategies and industrial policies of countries from Scotland to South Korea. So this is something which is really, really beginning to catch on and make a difference. I'd like to focus on 6 of those evidence-based workplace practices which we think are particularly important for the current crisis, for the current situation. And it's firstly about thinking about individual people's jobs. Because what we know in normal times is that people are more engaged and are more productive when they have jobs which challenge them, which give them opportunities to learn and develop on the job, which give them a degree of discretion about how they work. So the opportunity perhaps to experiment, to try things differently. Now that becomes even more critical at the present time, precisely because when you're at home, potentially being quite isolated, actually having work which is stimulating, where you're actually trusted to do things, to experiment, to try things in a different kind of way, can be really, really important for motivation. As is actually being part of a team which is a team in more than name only, so that it's really sharing problems, sharing knowledge. It's a real forum for actually, people bringing their issues on a day-to-day basis. And teams work particularly well when they're empowered to make their own decisions, to plan and schedule their own work without micromanagement. So job design and teamwork are 2 of the really key building blocks. But it's also important to focus on what we're really measuring, how we're really telling people whether or not they're doing a good job. We've heard some managers say, how will I know if people are working at home, whether they are really working? Well, wrong question for a start. What we really need to be thinking about in normal times and now is what people are really contributing to the business, not simply when they're logging on or logging off. And what they're contributing as well, as much as anything, in terms of their ideas and how they're actually supporting their colleagues in the business, not just things that can be measured on a spreadsheet. Fourthly, it's about those opportunities for people to really contribute their ideas on a day-to-day basis. Now, a lot of companies have had suggestion schemes which work for a little while, but other companies have really invested a lot in creating platforms for people to share their ideas, new products, new services, new ways of working. And that doesn't need to stop in the current sort of situation. People can also feel quite remote in the current situation from what's happening elsewhere in the company, about decisions that are being made. So actually, it's more important than ever that those decisions are actually shaped by people, by the ideas, by the experience, by the concerns of people throughout the organization. And of course, interconnected social media platforms are a great way of actually creating connections from the senior team right the way through to the front line. And finally, about leadership. And I think leadership is such an important sort of context for shaping, or driver for actually shaping successful responses to the current crisis. And I'd like to, bring Natalie in here, who will talk a little bit more about the importance of emotional intelligence in that context.
Yes, so when we're thinking about emotionally intelligent leadership, and we go back to the example of Edwin, where you've got companies that are quite defensive, usually in that context, it's because the leaders are defensive. They're therefore creating the whole company in that way. And when we say defensive, what we're usually meaning is people are struggling. And so this is why they revert to a kind of more defensive stance. And therefore they batten down the hatches rather than engaging everybody and encouraging connection and ideas and all those elements that will actually help the company to become much stronger. So Peter, can you put the other slide on? Thank you. Okay, so this is something that we developed the other day, bringing a few things together. So probably many of you have seen the Kubler-Ross change curve. And if you haven't, it's basically based on grief. And it shows the different feelings that we will go through during a change. And I reckon if most of us look at this now, we could probably say that we've been through most of these with this particular crisis. I probably go through it on a daily basis, quite frankly. So, or hourly basis. And so I think we could probably all relate to aspects of this, and these are the elements that you will go through before you can go through to acceptance. However, we've overlaid this with some aspects of resilience. The first one being that you are in this survival state, this space where you're really trying to get your head around it, denial, anger, and depression, perhaps. And this is really important point to stabilize yourself. And to stabilize your team. But it's hard to stabilize people around you if you're not stable yourself. So there's many ways in which you can do that. There's loads of information out there. We can talk about that in some of the questions, perhaps, of how you can do that. But to actually stabilize yourself and do some self-support will help you manage the next stage, which is the adapt stage, which is when you really want to re-engage everybody. Once you've helped to stabilize your team and engage them, then re-engaging them, getting them to come up with ideas, is really will help them feel valued, will help them feel part of the organization. And actually, individuals will not have the best ideas at the moment. You might have to completely change your business model, and somebody who's on the front line with customers may actually have all the information. And so giving them the opportunity, everyone the opportunity to come up with the ideas will be really powerful. And then to move into the recover and thrive area where you can then implement those ideas. So we may want to focus on the survive aspect today, stabilizing yourself and stabilizing your team and things you can do with that. Allowing people to connect on Zoom. Zoom is really hard. Or any internet is really hard to kind of connect to people. You do feel more remote. So there's ways in which you can connect to people in that situation, even though you're remote from them. Okay, and we have an example, don't we, Peter, of a company where we have a leader who at first really struggled with this whole emotionally intelligent process, and he had to learn very quickly, and he's been on his own journey, which has made a massive impact on the culture of the organization. He has completely transformed the organization, and they're still continuing, they're not stopping. And so Peter's going to briefly talk you through more on Booth Welsh.
Yeah, as Natalie says, Booth Welsh has been on a remarkable journey, led very much by Martin, who you can see on the left, the managing director. It's a medium-sized specialized engineering services company. And over the past 3 years, they have completely transformed their culture, their working practices, in a way which we think has positioned them very, very well for the current crisis. Their starting point was to undertake the workplace innovation diagnostic, which, unlike traditional engagement surveys, focuses on employees' experiences of these evidence-based workplace practices associated with high performance and engagement. The results were, as Natalie says, gave Martin, I think, a few sleepless nights at the beginning. What they said was that the majority of people in the workforce had very little idea about where the company was going. They saw the senior team, company strategy as something completely remote and disconnected from them. Although they were quite a skilled workforce, they had very, very few opportunities to contribute their ideas. They were working in silos, very much in grey cubicles, doing their own thing, not actually engaging with the business as a whole. Things that we did with them were to actually help them to develop a strategy which really engaged a very large percentage of the workforce. So a strategy which combined, if you like, the strategic knowledge of some of the senior team about markets, about clients, about opportunities, with the tacit knowledge of practical experience of people at the front line. So that strategy became a co-created product between the senior team and the workforce as a whole. We also worked with a cadre of in total now it's about 12 people who are the real change champions within the business, giving them the knowledge, the skills, the practical resources to actually sustain and drive that process of change forward. So here's Amy. She's just got her ILM certificate in leadership and management, which we awarded her. But she's got that not through writing long assignments, but through actually making change happen within Booth Welsh. And she is a really good example of a strong emerging leader. The results, well, at the current time, 50% of the workforce have been actively engaged in shaping the company's strategy. People from frontline workers right the way through to people in the senior team. They've got 60 actionable ideas for improving the products, the services, and the processes, all of which are currently being worked through. But critically, this momentum has sustained itself in the current crisis, even though now people have been working at home for 2 weeks or so. They're keeping the dialogue going, they're keeping the opportunities for ideas generation going, and they are really thinking about how they can position themselves to be well ahead of their competitors during this time. They have that opportunity now, and Martin is the kind of leader who will see that that opportunity is not wasted. What we're saying isn't new. When this photograph was taken at around 1950, you'll probably recognize it, you may recognize yourself, I don't know, then the evidence was already there that if you really empower people in the workplace, if you focus on those 6 aspects of workplace practice that we discussed earlier, then there are enormous benefits to be gained, even in normal times. All that evidence is showing that companies that adopt those practices systematically are gaining 20 to 60% bonuses compared with those organized on more traditional lines. And those indicate good productivity, they would do commerce action, they would include the capacity for innovation, but they would also include employee health and well-being. They are even more important to the testing in those workplace innovation processes are the ones who are going to come out of this crisis stronger and better for it. We've mentioned the workplace innovation diagnostic, the leadership programs, and emotional intelligence. And we are offering them at a 20% discount to chamber members over the next couple of weeks or so. So thank you very much. I hope that's been interesting, and we look forward to some challenging questions.
Thank you, Peter. I have a question. At some of those innovation sessions, you had a picture of everyone gathered around a table, lots of yellow stickies. Clearly, we can't do that. How are we going to innovate remotely as we are at the moment?
We've done this on several occasions before. I mean, mainly in the past with organizations with very dispersed sites. And you can develop, as we have, a kind of an online action planning tool, which actually enables people to work together on ideas in real time, to identify where if you like, the red flags are and the green flags, really thinking about where the ideas for improvement can come. But the thing is, it has to be collaborative. It's not just about individual people stuck at home contributing their own ideas into a black hole. It's about people working together in real time. And there are all kinds of tools and resources out there and we'd be happy to advise people on how to use them successfully.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Natalie, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say as well is from an emotional intelligence perspective, I think you need to engage and stabilize people and engage them first. And one of the ways that I would do that, even over Zoom, is ask people how they're feeling at the beginning of any meeting that you have, and get into the habit of it and get them saying, I'm feeling like this and why. And you start as the leader of that, and you really begin to understand everybody and where they're coming from, and you can build more connection, which hopefully you can take back into the workplace and carry on. But in these times, it's really important you get to know how people are feeling, and then you can work more effectively with them, coming up with ideas and coming up and generating things, because there'll be more trust and more connection.
It's interesting that at Booth Welsh, I mean, they've always started when they have team meetings or innovation meetings, they always start with some kind of like bonding exercise. And as Natalie says, asking people how they're feeling. they're still doing that with their online meetings. And I think we're all used to using video conferencing and so on in a very transactional sort of way, you know, working through agendas. But we need to bring that kind of bonding side to it, to our, you know, to our meetings more now than ever.
Yeah,
I think that's very good. I mean, we do, don't we, Helen? We have a daily 10 o'clock chamber meeting, and the first thing I do is go around and ask everyone how they're doing and how you feeling and what have you.
Yeah.
Helen will come in there. Go on.
I was just going to say, yeah, we do that, but I think it's a very good point that you make, Natalie, that we do ask how everybody's feeling, but I know that Stuart and I are particularly keen to sort of be the strong people, you know, we're there to support everybody, but we don't often share how we're feeling. I don't anyway. I know I sort of say, yeah, everything's fine. Whereas actually I'm really missing seeing my family and my mum. And sometimes perhaps it's good to share that first of all, to show that actually we're all in this together. It's a good point.
I think it's really, really important because it shows vulnerability. And when you get that vulnerability, you start to build trust with people. You know, I'm a leader and I struggle, and that's okay. And I really hope you can share that you're struggling with me if you are, you know, and then it really it builds that connection more so than if everyone goes, yeah, I'm fine, you know, as we tend to. If you can create the atmosphere where you're actually being really open, you'll see how powerful it is. Yeah, great, Helen, thank you.
Carolyn Giles would like to come in there. I'll unmute. Oh, you've unmuted yourself. Okay, Carolyn, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think it's worth thinking about furlough versus people working from home at the moment, because I think one of the biggest concerns that everybody's got is that there are some quite stringent rules around furlough with regards to not doing anything that progresses the business. And I think a number of employers are taking that to mean we will be limited in the contact we can have. And actually, for those people, they're completely out of touch. And I have real concerns about those who are furloughed, those who are maybe on maternity leave or shared parental leave, those who are already on long-term sick before this started, and how we engage those people within the organisation. Because actually, when we come out the other end of this, they will have had very, very limited contact. And I've got real concerns about their emotional well-being as a result.
Yeah. So are they not allowed to connect at all?
Well, the guidance isn't very clear. The guidance says that they can do training, but they can't do anything that would progress the business. So they're not supposed to be doing social media that might be seen as marketing, for example. So that is taking them out of their networks for those people that heavily network as part of their jobs. They can't be doing anything that could assist the business in making any money, which is a very difficult thing to convert into reality, I think.
So if I have no idea if this is allowed, but I would say if they were getting together with you to have a conversation about how they're feeling and what's going on as a team, and you're not working through what is going to, you know, it's more social, it's more of a social connection than anything else, and you're not talking about work, then actually just having that on a regular basis, I think would be really powerful to keep these people engaged and connected. I'm assuming that that's something they can do if it was optional and they didn't have to do it, and you know.
Yeah,
I think that's exactly right. I think the key to that is, you know, the innovation element that you've been talking about absolutely can't happen, because innovation lead to obviously future success, we would hope. But I think you're right. It's about making sure that we keep that social contact in some way. And one of the things that we're lucky, we work in a unionised organisation, so we can actually use our trade union to do that. But obviously that's incredibly rare these days. So I think it is about organisations thinking about how they keep their furloughed staff connected without breaking any of the rules.
Yeah, I think British Chambers of Commerce are looking into trying to get some clarity around furloughing and what does furthering the business mean. For those of you who are company directors, you can technically furlough yourself, but then you have a legal and statutory duty to do certain things with the company. So you can't be, on the one hand, completely furloughed, and on the other hand, discharging your statutory duty. So this is the bit where I say, despite this being recorded, don't quote me on this, but British Chambers of Commerce are saying at the moment, we think it is better to seek forgiveness than permission. As long as you make a policy note somewhere about why you are doing this, I am keeping in touch with my employees for their mental health and well-being. It would be a very cruel government that then says you've been actually furthering the business that way.
one of the things about the people who are on our program, some of whom are furloughed and some aren't, but they are learning. I mean, it's e-learning, so I think that's allowed. But part of the learning process, and certainly the accreditation process, is how they are going to translate the learning into their own business. So although they can't actually do that now, they're actually preparing themselves for the changes that they're going to be involved in. Those could be innovation forums, those could be team development, those could be all kinds of different things. So, you know, because in a sense, there's no point in learning without action. So what I think we can do is to give them those sort of opportunities to acquire new knowledge, but also to think and actively plan for the application of that knowledge when they return.
Absolutely. And we've got a question on the chat that's come to me privately. And if anyone wants to ask a question that they don't want to say in front of everyone, send it to me and I'll ask it on your behalf. So don't be embarrassed if there's anything you want to say. But what do you suggest be a good schedule to work from home? Especially, I guess this is around managers staying in touch. So we all still stuck in our Monday to Friday 9 to 5 routine, but actually that may not be suiting people when they're working from home. So how do you feel you manage that, where the manager might not want to work at the same time as the staff, or vice versa?
I think the key thing that's come up from this is that last couple of weeks is the issue of trust. You know, and the manager that I quoted who was saying, how do I know people are working when they're, you know, when they're at home? I think we have to have those kinds of, I mean, managers really should, in any case, be having coaching conversations with people when, you know, they're really understanding what is helping people to perform well, to work well, to stay engaged, to stay well at home, and the things that are getting in the way. And those managers ought to be really helping people to overcome those obstacles and to really concentrate on strengths. Now, you know, if you're working from home, there are children at home, all those kinds of things, 9 to 5 may not be the best, you know, sort of times for you. That doesn't matter. What really matters is, you know, that people are staying engaged and they're staying productive in whatever way they can do, and being coached and supported to actually find that best way.
Absolutely. I worked with for a law firm, and law firms, Carolyn will nod and smile at this because she's worked for a law firm too, are very obsessed with time because that's the way they charge, and they can be particularly keen on the whole, well, you've got to be in at 9 and go at 5. And I found it very hard to change the mindset, especially of the older lawyers who would use expressions like, when I did my articles in 1912 with a fountain pen and a quill on an old wooden desk, that we had to be in at the crack of dawn and go late. And I would say, but it's not about attendance, it's about productivity. If that young lawyer who actually likes to be out longer at lunchtime or come in late because he's a night owl, not an early bird, if he's still bringing in 200,000 a year in fees, do we care what time he starts and finishes, you know? But it's getting that cultural change about how, I suppose that comes back to the bits you're talking about. What do you measure? What's important? Is attendance important? Is it important to be logged on and by 9 o'clock in the morning? There's a comment from Karen. Furloughed staff can continue their professional development and other training. It is essential that we keep in touch with furloughed team members by phone or email or other communication channels, as long as those conversations do not contribute to work. Best to discuss their well-being, training, and just what's happening in work. I think that's what we're all agreeing there. And Helen's asked a question of everyone. Does anyone have any examples of how they've innovated or started some constructive evaluation of their business processes for the future? So has this, like it has for me, sharpened one's mind a bit about the way we work? Anybody want to come in on that? No? So, I mean, the example I can give, it does focus your mind. If we're all working from home and it seems to be working, why do we all need an office? Would you invest in office premises at the moment? That would be an interesting investment to start building offices, wouldn't it? We're going to have a really hard case to tell our staff they can't work from home. Those who decide, actually, I'd like to put in a request to work from home. After this, it'll be very hard to say to them, no, you can't. Well, actually, I did for several weeks, possibly months, and what have you. So I think it will change the way we work, won't it?
Yeah.
I think it will actually, and it will be interesting in the fullness of time if businesses don't see an upsurge in flexi working from home practices if it's been proven to work now.
We met with the architects who designed the new LinkedIn headquarters in Dublin a year or two back, and they've designed that very much around interaction, because they work on the basis that, you know, why do you have rows and rows of desks for people to do stuff that they could do anywhere? But people do need to interact. They need to keep their networks, you know, build their networks. They need to chat. They need to feel part of the whole. So lots of sofas, lots of comfy places to sit and drink coffee, very, very few desks. Well, I think that's the office of the future.
We are social animals, aren't we? I certainly am, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm finding this isolation incredibly difficult. I don't like being on my own. I like meeting people, shaking hands, having a beer or just a coffee, or talking to people. So I think that, from my point of view, it'll be what interactions, when we get back to whatever work looks like the other side of this, what interactions are going to be valuable? So maybe we decide that meeting and having a cup of coffee is valuable, but what actually is going to be a productive place of work where we go, and what is going to be just a place we attend? It's just a rhetorical question, unless anyone's got any fantastic answers to that, but I find that very interesting, the difference between all sitting around having a really good chat and passing the time of day, and actually conversations that are productive and helpful, and the bits of those that we need. Any thoughts on that?
I don't think it's particularly insightful, but I think from being at home and everyone working from home over the last 2 weeks, if anything, I think everyone's been more productive. I think there's quite a lot of, it's easy to get a lot of chat in the office, which is fine, but then if they've been chatting about their dog for half an hour, like, actually, I think we could all work from home, say 4 days a week, be really productive, and then maybe every Friday everyone could go and have a bit of a jolly, have a catch up on a chat about what's been going on, a bit more fluidly, and have some fun. And I think we'd probably in a working week get more done, and feel really good about it. But so I definitely don't think there's any benefit in the sort of micromanagement 9 to 5 being present in an office. We've definitely learned that in just 2 weeks.
Thank you, Helen. And the other Helen has her hand up, a digital hand. Helen Hart, carry on.
I was just going to ask Natalie, really, just regards to working in isolation. I do agree with the other Helen that actually, there are lots of benefits. I know I've been incredibly, I'm always feel that I'm more productive when I'm working from home anyway, because of less interruptions. But then I do also appreciate the interaction with the team when I do go into the office. But I just wonder whether Natalie has got any specific hints and tips and so on how to manage that isolation, because a lot of us, like Stuart, find it very difficult. Is it routine or is it not routine, or what sort of things would you recommend for us to keep us mentally healthy at this particular time?
So it really depends on how far you want to go. There's for some people just having a structure to your day. So I was watching, I'm a therapist as well, so I'm working with people that are very traumatized at the moment, and because of this situation. And one of the things with them is it's about having structure, because actually we've lost control of certain things that we usually have control of, which is in effect kind of causing us to feel quite traumatized at some level in varying degrees. And so things like taking control back for yourself in your daily life will have a bigger impact. So things like structuring your day and keeping it very structured, and doing things throughout the day that feel good, that you want to do, that you enjoy. So breaking up your work with breaks, but then also doing some stuff that you might really enjoy. I don't know if that's sitting with your children doing some painting, or reading a book or something, but trying to make sure you have those scattered within your day. There's loads of other things. You could mindfulness. One of the things that I recommend, and actually which has been proven to increase resilience, is mindfulness. there's loads of apps. One I use, which isn't mentioned very much actually, is Budify, and I find that really useful, and it's actually, I think, a bit cheaper than some of the others. But actually doing mindfulness practice is massively helpful. Grounding exercises. So when we're talking about trauma and feeling a bit disassociated, I don't know about you, if you've been on Zoom all day, you feel quite disassociated from reality in some way. Bringing yourself back into a place of groundedness. So going in the garden, taking your shoes off and walking in the grass and feeling the grass, feeling the ground. Might sound a bit crazy, but it's about senses. You need to bring your senses back in. Smells, having strong mints or strong taste, essential oils that are really strong smells. If you feel really disassociated, things like a bit of a cold blast when you're having a shower at the end or something, or ice on your back or your shoulders, can bring you really back into the present time. There's an awful lot that that's only a sort of few things that I can recommend, but there's loads and loads more. So I can, if anybody wants to sort of know some more tips, I can talk to them afterwards as well. But I think those are the sort of key things: is grounding, breaks, doing things you enjoy, exercise, going out, walking, that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Natalie. I actually shared on social media and with some of the team, I've got a colleague who's a submariner, and they spend a lot of time in isolation, as you can imagine. They're right there together, but they spend a lot of time. And some really interesting tips, one of which was there must be somewhere you can have your own space. And on a submarine, it's your bunk. You close the curtain, it's 6 foot by 2 foot, but it is your space, and nobody ever goes into your space. That is the thing. You have a workspace and a rest space. And I found I was doing all my work at the kitchen table, which is the same place that I ate, made my tea, prepared the dog, his food and everything. So I've now moved into the dining room as my study, and then I've got a separate space. He said routine's really important. You need to know what you're doing when you're doing it. You need to dress for work so that you wear whatever it is, even if your decision is I'm going to wear jeans and a t-shirt while I work from home, well, that's absolutely fine, but you dress like that for your work space, and that you give yourself time, that you say, this is my work time, this is my play time. And finally, he said cleanliness, really, really important, to carry on with your routine of getting up, showering, dressing, getting yourself ready, but also the cleanliness of your surroundings. Very, very easy when you're cooped up to become a bit of a slob, and it's actually very good for your mental health to have that time. So I've done exactly what you suggest, Natalie. I go for a run every evening now. After work, I go for a run, I breathe in the air, I look at the trees and listen to the birds, and you can actually hear birds now. It's incredible.
I was also going to say as well is, when we're thinking about being resilient and and emotionally intelligent, paying attention to how we're feeling, whatever that is, whether that's angry, whether it's frustrated, whether it's happy, whether it's ecstatic, just paying attention to it will help you understand where you are, and not judging it, not kind of criticizing yourself for feeling upset because you're shut in and you hate it. That's okay. Everyone is struggling, or a lot of people are struggling with this situation. And that will help you when you're working with your teams to be able to empathize and understand more about them and where they're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were saying earlier about sharing those feelings and emotions. So the 5 chief executives of the chambers in the Southwest, Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, Somerset and Business West, we had a Zoom chat the other day for no reason other than touch base with each other. And one of the guys started crying when he talked about furloughing his staff, and he started apologizing. I said, I think it was Benjamin Franklin said, don't apologize for emotion, because when you do, you apologize for truth. And of course, we all feel for each other, and we're all there for each other. And there's any shame in saying, I'm really struggling with this. This is tough, but there's a lot of support here, and the chamber team are here to support all of you. And that doesn't have to be just with the business advice. If Helen and I particularly are quite used to having people offload to us, aren't we, Helen? Helen and I offload too, and vice versa, but we're here for you. We're available on just about every form of communication known to man, on email, phone, WhatsApp, Zoom, FaceTime, you name it, you can get hold of us, and we're here for you. So forgive me, speaking of British Chambers of Commerce Southwest, I have a meeting I have to attend in 8 minutes time of British Chambers of Commerce in Southwest, so we can look at how we support you as businesses. But before I go, could I just ask you if any of you have any thoughts about what you think British Chambers of Commerce should be doing? That's nationally on a lobbying piece, but if there's anything you want the Chamber, Devon and Plymouth Chamber to be doing for you, anything you'd like us to be putting on, any information you need, any events, anything like that, please let me know. So you can do that right now if you want by unmuting yourself and telling me, or you can email me, stuart.elford@devonchamber.co.uk, and Helen is helen.hart@devonchamber.co.uk. I'm not getting, oh, I've got Linda Middleton-Jones has put her hand up. Linda. Oh, I'm unmuting you, Linda, hang on. No, you just, why can I not unmute Linda? Let's just try again.
Hello.
Hello.
I had to do it myself, Stuart. Never mind. I would like to find out via the British Chambers of Commerce about, as you would imagine from me, international trade and Brexit. I saw something on the news today that Boris is absolutely adamant that we're still going for that run-out date in January. I would just like to have some confirmation of that, because all of our companies and you know, we need to hit the ground running when we come out of this, and therefore it's really, really important to know if that is actually the right message. Will we still be coming out of that date?
Yes, thank you, Linda. So at the moment, you're right. The Prime Minister is saying that we will leave on the 31st, at the end of the transition period. Some government ministers and departments are beginning to say that may not be sensible given the amount of time we'll have to prepare. But I think what we're doing is getting over the initial curve, as they call it, and that'll make a decision as to whether we really are in a position to exit as planned on the 31st. My sense, for what it's worth, we are an apolitical organisation, by the way. I have no political view on this at all, and nor would I express it if I had a personal one. But the sense I get is that they're not going to announce that now at a time when there's a lot of other crises going on. I think that will come later, but there is a distinct possibility that it will be deferred, because that's what some government ministers are already talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Linda. So I don't see any other hands up. Ben, I don't know if you were touching the screen, Ben Manning, or you were just, no, you were just touching the screen. That's all right. Yeah, that's okay. I didn't know if you were waving, you had a question. Look, everyone, thank you very much. I'm going to just very quickly unmute all. There we are, so we can hear you all. Can I just thank Natalie and Peter very much for a really interesting presentation, and I hope it's given you some food for thought. And very strange to do this on screen, but we'll give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thanks all. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.